All right. Well, great to be with you, Peggy.
Yeah, you too. You too. It's been a while.
It has.
Yeah,
Yeah. So we've been crossing paths for a lot of years
we have.
and so appreciate your work and your leadership and your steadfast commitment um, to so many issues. And in particular, today, I'd love to talk about the Nestle privatization issue. So, Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation has been working in this space for a long time. I'm wondering if you could give our listeners a little background on the organization.
Well, the organization formed 21 years ago when Nestle arrived in Michigan. They had been kicked out of Wisconsin once they didn't want them, and they found an open door in Michigan, so they showed up in Mecosta County, got a permit to pump 400 gallons per minute from a private well in Mecosta, and they were pumping for a while before people who lived there actually noticed something was wrong with the stream called the Dead Stream. It was starting to turn into mud flats. So they figured out what was going on, and they formed MCWC at that time, Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation. Started out with about 2,000 people. Terry Swear was the leader at the time. She and her husband Gary. Gary just passed away a few weeks ago, unfortunately. But Terry was the leading figure for that, and they contracted with Jim Olson to do the legal work. And they filed a lawsuit against Nestle to stop the pumping. So that's how the organization began. A lot of support from people in the community, of course. There were people who joined the lawsuit. It took $1 million and 9 years to resolve that particularly. Went through several different courts. Various rulings that were in favor of us, some not. They ended up with a settlement and a ruling by Judge Root that was a precedent-setting ruling that said that 400 gallons per minute in that kind of an ecosystem was not sustainable, and it forced Nestle to cut their pumping in half. So they are still under that rule. They had to reduce it to an average of 218 gallons per minute on a yearly basis. They had to not pump during times of drought, and there's a whole rigid schedule for what they had to do, and they also had to pay for stream monitors. So there's still a hydrologist that is monitoring what's going on there. So that was resolved in 2009, and all the people who worked so hard on that, are still owed a lot of money, but they managed to pay off. I kind of came into it at about 2011, I think, was when I started. I was living downstate, and I got involved with some of the demonstrations outside of the plant, the Stanwood plant, and had friends like some people who were working with this Sweetwater Alliance. I knew some of those people, and they got me involved. And before I knew it, I'm on the board of MCWC. Terry kind of rolled me in there, and a lot of the people were tired and burned out, and they'd had a really long, hard struggle. So I joined the board, and several of other people from up here in this area came with me, and we just kind of held on to things for a few years to figure. And at that time, that was when fracking was just gearing up. So we got involved in the ban fracking campaign because it was clear to us that groundwater was seriously threatened, particularly by what was going on in Kalkaska County. So we worked on that campaign for a couple of years, and got involved in a local injection well issue that was related because they were injecting the waste from fracking also in Mecosta, in Fort Township. So we began to do work on injection wells as well because nobody else was talking about them. It was not a subject that was out there in other organizations, So we've done quite a bit of researching and tracking on injection wells, and are still doing that to this day because, I mean, I can talk about that whenever you want to, but the DEQ under Snyder was trying to get what they call primacy from the EPA, which would have meant that Michigan can make all of its own decisions about those injection wells. And we were saying, no, it needs to stay with the EPA. We don't want the clowns from the DEQ to be in charge of this stuff. They never see a permit that they don't like. So whereas the EPA, you can force a public hearing and get the public involved. So we're still working on that. They're still debating it, and I just heard today that the EPA has said they're going to withdraw the state's application for primacy, at least temporarily, while they review it, because there was enough negative comment. And that's a really difficult issue for people to get their hands on. You know, the technicalities of it just can kind of put you to sleep if you're not careful. I mean, you know, but it's really crucial to know about it. And so what happens when there's a request for a permit in a location, one of our people who happens to be a land surveyor and really knows what he's talking about, he'll go out and investigate the site, and he'll notice what's going on and publicize it to the community. If they want to do something about it, then they need to, you know, force a public hearing, which sometimes happens, and occasionally the permit withdrawal occurs, and occasionally it just gets ignored and they grant the permit. So, you know, we don't necessarily always have resources to do something about all of these, but at least we're calling attention to them. So we got involved in that for a while. And then Nestle decided to increase the pumping at this well that they started. They started pumping in 2011 at this spring water well in Everett, PW 101. And they had originally been pumping at 150 gallons per minute. They got an extension to 250 gallons per minute with no public comment whatsoever. And then they asked for a permit for 400. And that was in 2016. And at that time, nobody saw the public notice about that permit. You know, we just weren't paying attention. And if Garrett Ellison from MLive had not called us, there was 4 days left on the comment period for that, and he alerted us to it. We knew nothing about it.
Wow.
So in those 4 days, with Flo and MCWC and several other organizations, we just mounted a campaign, got a lot of comment, and they were forced to hold a hearing. So, and they also were forced to extend the comment period and the hearing process months and months, and finally had a big public hearing in Big Rapids. 600 people showed up. We thought, you know, we wanted hearings all over the state because we thought this is a statewide issue. This is a privatization of water that's going on. Nestle's taking water for nothing. And this was right at the height of the Flint water crisis.
Right. A lot of folks from Flint came to the hearing.
We brought them.
Awesome.
You know, we paid for the buses to bring Detroit and Flint people to the hearing. So we thought it was important that they have a say in that because they were busy trying to deal with no water at all. This was right in the middle of the shutoffs in Detroit and the Flint crisis. So we connected the dots on those issues as much as possible in a very public kind of way. People showed up, they testified at this hearing. There were 80,000 comments, almost all of them opposed to Nestle getting the permit. And the DEQ granted the permit anyway. So we had to file a contested case. So we could have, you know, rather than go to a lawsuit, which is, as we had already discovered, extremely expensive, we filed a contested case first, where the department itself has to make a decision. It's a court, administrative law court within the department. So we went through that whole process for a couple of years. The judge ruled against us and recommended that the director of Eagle, now Eagle, had become Eagle, that the director of Eagle be make the decision to favor the permit, to grant the permit. Now, she had a choice. Lisa Clark had the choice to say, yes or no, legally. She chose to just kick it down the road and dismiss our whole case on a jurisdictional issue, which had already been decided. 2 years before, it had been decided that, yes, in fact, the department had jurisdiction over this. She claimed, well, no, they really didn't, and kicked it down the road. Told us we needed to go to circuit court, which was really an outrageous piece of work, and everybody is outraged about it. So we are now in circuit court. They haven't held a hearing yet. We've filed all the paperwork. So we're being forced to pay buckets of money. The citizens are being forced to pay buckets of money to do the work of the state. I mean, the state agencies should be doing all this work to protect the water. They should have been doing all kinds of environmental reviews, which have never happened. That's the other piece. The other piece is that we have been running around in the woods for a number of years, taking pictures, documenting the damage that's being done by Nestle, just pumping at 150 or 250 gallons per minute. 2 streams, Twin Creek and Chippewa Creek, have been badly damaged. We have pictures. We can show people the dried up headwaters of Twin Creek. We can show them the mud flats on Chippewa Creek. We can show them the 2 ponds that no longer exist, that are owned by the township supervisor. So we're on the ground, documenting all this stuff. We cannot get anyone from Eagle to go there and tell the truth. They went once and they didn't see anything that bothered them at all, and went back and reported, everything's hunky-dory. Now, these are the same clowns that wrote the permit in the first place, and they're defending their own territory and their own history. These are the old guys left over from Snyder and previous administrations. Clark does not seem to have been able to get around that. She's not able to come up with a staff that actually reflects what they claim is their new position on things. Dana Nestle, we filed a complaint with her, an environmental complaint. She says she has no statutory way to go after it. She can't find a way to go after Nestle as much as she would like to. We disagree with her on that. We think, yes, of course she can.
Public trust law?
Yes, there's all kinds of things, and so we have yet to convince her that she does have some legal routes. She just says we have to change the laws and we have to change the legislature. Well, that's not going to happen in the next year or so, and our organization can't get involved in electoral politics anyway. We're a 501c3. But so we have not been able to get her to investigate, which is what we've asked for, and please investigate what's actually going on the ground and the damage that's being done by Nestle. We also filed a complaint with the environmental justice advocate, Regina Strong. No response at all. It keeps getting turned over to the same 2 guys that have been there forever. They get, it all just gets passed into them, and then they say the same things that they've been saying for 20 years. These are the same people that were advocating for Nestle from the beginning. So we're getting nowhere with that. So that's where we are on the Nestle piece. I'm going down there next week to take some more up-to-date pictures, so nobody can say, well, those pictures are from 3 years ago. No, they'll be from next week.
Thank you for everything you're doing.
I was already down there last week and took pictures of the increasing mud flats.
Okay. So people ask me, how is this possible? How can Nestle just set up shop and steal the water? It's not theirs to steal. And I know that the Great Lakes Compact has a loophole in it where bottling can happen, and that was very disappointing because all of these leaders of states and provinces came together to protect the Great Lakes from privatization, and the threat at that time was large-scale privatization, like a pipeline to the southwest or China coming in with barges. But the provision to be able to privatize, extract water, and put them in small vessels is in the Great Lakes
That's
Compact.
a loophole in like 5.7 gallons or less. Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also loopholes in our existing state laws too. When they changed the state laws in 2008 in order to be compatible with the compact. So those things got, and so the Safe Drinking Water Act and all that stuff got altered, to be compatible. But several loopholes were put in there, and it does allow for the bottled water industry to function. They're allowed to bottle water. They pay $200 a year for the permit, for the paperwork for the permit. That's it, and they can get 21 million gallons of water for that or more, from each well. I mean, it's just an astounding amount of water that they get for nothing.
It really is.
But that's legal right now. That's legal.
And so the argument that I've heard from Jim Olson is that the public trust law is more substantial than these newer laws and should defeat them, but there's so much corporate collusion with governments.
Right. That you cannot get them to even, I'm trying to think of what the word is that Jim uses, that to establish the public trust as, like as a statute. It's there in the Constitution, but it's not, doesn't have kind of statutory power to it in some way, and he understands all that stuff. I don't understand the technicalities, but there's a way that public trust needs to be codified so that they have to adhere to it. Right now they somehow are able to get around it, even though it's in the Constitution that it's there. So he's right. I mean, and that's kind of the next step, is to try to figure out how to do that. How to get. Meanwhile, of course, we have a very unfriendly legislature. They're not about to do any of that stuff, and an attorney general that's not willing to go after them yet. I mean, she's got other things on her plate. Obviously, she's busy with Line 5 and Flint and other things. But this is something we're hoping that she will take on. But in the meantime. In the meantime, we're forming coalitions all over the place and trying to magnify our impact. So we have a coalition of frontline organizations across the country that are working on Nestle issue, particularly the recent sale of Nestle North America.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So, I mean, part of what has happened, even though we have laws that need to change, is that Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation and other groups have organized the public and educated the public, and so there's tremendous pressure that Nestle's feeling.
Oh, yeah.
And I've heard stories of Nestle leadership being confronted in Davos or at some corporate event in Florida, and people saying, "Hey, you're stealing Michigan's water."
Right. Well, not just Michigan, all over the world.
All over the world. But we've got Michiganders kind of pollinated throughout the world too.
Yeah.
So you're part of a coalition, a broad coalition, that's fighting Nestle, and similar to what happened with Monsanto under all this pressure, something has happened with the sale of Nestle.
Right. I mean, Nestle's, is a Swiss corporation, and they have a relationship with the Swiss government that is worth protecting from them.
Okay.
They get a lot of benefit out of that relationship. So one of the things that happened is that the pressure that they're getting all over the world for their practices, they're really outrageous practices in some places, Africa in particular, is having an effect on their relationship with the Swiss government. They don't want to be, looking bad either. So that's where it comes up in these international meetings. Nestle gets called on the carpet for the way they're behaving. They build a bottled water plant in a rural area in Africa where there's no water. Nobody has access to the water. They put a bottled water plant in there, and people are still walking 40 miles a day to find water. And then they had the nerve to open up the tap for a day and tell people they could come and get free water. They didn't tell them it was only going to be for a day, so people walked from all over and came, and by that time the tap was closed. I mean, that's the kind of evil stuff they do. Gina Luster from Flint went to visit that site in Africa with some sponsorship from Corporate Accountability. And I mean, her stories are just outrageous. You know, it just really is. So those kind of stories are coming from everywhere: Brazil, France, and in North America we have Maine, Florida, Colorado, California, Michigan, and Ontario and British Columbia. Those are the places where Nestle has been fighting, you know, to hang on to its permits and in various stages. I mean, there's different state laws, so it plays out differently in different places. But we are all now talking to each other in what's called the Troubled Waters campaign, which is really helpful because there's some young people who know how to do research, and they can do a lot of techie stuff that some of us old folks just don't do very well. So that's been very useful, and we share information and you know, get the word out. So what happened? So Nestle, they announced actually last fall, I think it was, that they were looking to sell their North American bottling operation. And so in March, I think it was, they actually completed the sale to 2 private equity firms, One Rock LLC, I think it is, and Dean and Metropolis Incorporated. Now, those are 2 private equity funds with no experience or no interest in bottled water. Their only interest is in making money for their investors, and they play with all these financial instruments and tools that nobody knows anything about, and siphon off profit wherever they can, but they take over troubled companies. Well, Nestle was starting to have some trouble with its bottled water operations, and they made it clear they wanted to get out of that and focus on their premier brands and their things, their more money-making kind of things. I mean, it's one of the biggest food corporations in the world, so they have plenty of opportunity to make money. They didn't really need to be saddled with a company that was causing them grief. So these 2 companies, for $4.3 billion, they bought Nestle Waters North America. Just the bottled water, thing. And they therefore now own the infrastructure, the bottled plants and whatever else, and the permits in most cases are getting transferred. So, at least in Michigan, I don't know, it's not clear what's happening in some other places. They have different laws west of the Mississippi as far as water goes. So there's a lot of differences in what's going on, but there was just a victory in California in the San Bernardino Valley, where it was ruled finally by a judge, I think, that they couldn't take that water anymore. They were operating on expired permits, and that those permits were not going to be renewed, and they needed to stop. I mean, in the middle of a drought there and wildfires, they've for years been operating on expired permits in San Bernardino. So that was a nice little piece. There different issues in different places are at the forefront of it. In Maine, they're focusing on the plastic issue. Anyway, we're part of that. We're just one organization that's part of that coalition. But in the meantime, there's also a coalition of groups. That's a very informal coalition group of organizations here that want to do something about this dismissal, because the contested case is still on. They just filed a piece of paper that said, "Oh, we changed our name, our brand name." No, they changed ownership. So there's a difference, and we'll make sure that is clear. They didn't just change a brand name; they changed ownership, and that should mean that Eagle should do something to check them out before they go ahead and allow this permit to be implemented. So we're waiting to get the case scheduled by the judge in Ingham County. That's where we are. And in the meantime, we're researching what we can about this outfit. They're rebranding it as Blue Triton. Now these Metropolis took over Hostess Twinkie operation, which was faltering, was going bankrupt. Siphoned a whole bunch of money out of it and then flipped it in about 3 or 4 years. Did the same thing with Pabst Blue Ribbon. And they use junk bonds and bad debt, and they wait till the bonds are coming due, and then they flip it quickly before they have to pay off the bonds. So they're not even starting out with real money. It's just, these are sleazy operations, but they're legal.
Right.
Yeah, they're legal.
Yeah, right.
So we'll be spending some time to educate people about this as we gather information, and we'll be watching what they do in Stanwood at the bottle plant there. Because
Great.
my guess is the people who work there are not going to be real happy with the cost-cutting things that are going to go on.
Mm-hmm.
And they think they're holding on to their good jobs. Those jobs may not last very long. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's where we are. And we don't know what they'll do with whatever agreements they've made with communities. They're not going to pay any attention to promises that Nestle made to local communities.
Right.
So
And so you all are operating on donations?
totally.
Yeah.
We don't take government or corporate money. We have no paid staff. We have no office. We've always been all volunteer organization, which is becoming harder and harder to be.
Mm-hmm.
More and more organizations are actually depending on paid staff, and people are going to school and getting degrees and doing this kind of work. And so, of course, they can expect to get paid when they get out of college for what they're doing. And our organization is fairly dependent on retirees who don't need an income. People like me who are teachers and have pensions, and we're old, and we just don't need money for anything. So, but our organization does, and it's strictly donations. Our members still support us. And the other thing we got involved in was this potash mine in Percy.
Yeah, let's hear about that.
Well, that's
not that far away.
No, well, that's achieved a dead end pretty much. But yes,
Okay.
it's only 8 miles from where Nestle's pumping, where this guy from Colorado with no experience whatsoever, having never mined anything at all, which has finally come out publicly, and he's finally had to admit that he's never mined anything at all, bought a piece of property that had at one time been mined for potash, and there is a seam of potash there in that area that has been mined in the past. That's a pretty good seam, but it's in the middle of a whole lot of wetlands, pristine wetlands.
Very water, resource intensive, tons of water.
They need 1,200 gallons a minute to feed these the process, the extraction process. And then they have 11 injection wells to put the brine back in the ground. Bulk Hill Marsh is one of the wetland areas that's right next to this site. It's a worse site you could imagine. It's not where the other mine was. The other mine was on a better site a few miles from there. Completely ridiculous site. There's trumpeter swans there. There are a couple of other endangered species. It's a very pristine wetland. So that's where they want to put this factory. The problem is that this guy doesn't have enough investors. So he's been on a PR campaign for several years to promote the operation, to get the permits that he needs, quite a few of them, and to get investors to put the money in. He doesn't have them yet. We've been attempting to stop him by doing our own research and publishing information. We have some of our members who live there, who live at the site, have put together a lot of good information to highlight this travesty. So, but in the meantime, of course, the DEQ granted the permits, and this comes under the Oil and Mineral Division. So there are secrecy provisions that don't apply to drinking water. So there's some information we can't get. We're not allowed to have access to. When you're dealing with oil industry, you have to assume that there's going to be all this stupid secrecy stuff. So anyway, that's where we are. We're waiting for a ruling. We filed a contested case on that after they granted the permits for these 3 wells. And we're waiting for the judge to rule. We don't expect much from it. It's the same judge that ruled in the Nestle case, Judge Poulter. So the people there who are, have been doing most of the work on this are still waiting to see what's going to happen with that.
Okay.
Meanwhile, there's no plant being built yet. And they've cleared some land. They bulldozed a piece of land, but they haven't been able to start anything. I mean, it's just a horrible place for it. And there's no infrastructure to move the potash out of there. No trains or trucks or anything. Whereas Canadian potash is right on a rail line and as cheap as can be. There's no need for this. This is a money-making, an attempt by somebody to make money and do the same thing that these guys are doing with Nestle, flip it. As soon as he gets his investors in place, he will bail out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Well,
system sucks.
It does. It does. It's
it really does.
It's sobering, but at the same time, what your organization has done is still harm reduction, even though we haven't changed the system.
Right, and education. I mean,
education,
people just,
culture shift.
They don't know, and they need to know, and it has been. It's the same thing that people are doing with Line 5. I mean, How many years have we spent educating people about that? And we also are part of that coalition.
Yeah.
How many years have we spent educating people about Line 5 who had no clue? I mean, I had no clue until fairly, recently that there were pipelines under the Straits of Mackinac. Who knew?
Right.
Who knew that somebody would be that dumb to put a pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac, in the first place? And then that's the reaction that you kind of get, like I was at the farmer's market this morning, tabling, and with my, no tunnel, no Line 5 sign up. How do they do that?
Yeah.
So that constant buildup of outrage and education is, in my mind, the main thing that's going to move people to do something.
Yep.
I mean, look what it took to get Keystone shut down.
Yeah,
they're
10
not
years.
willingly going to do any of that, and we still haven't gotten any headway in Minnesota on Line 3. So it's all part of the big picture, and we see our job as kind of connecting dots as much as possible. And we're a small grassroots organization, but we see where the dots fit together and how really they're all tied in with the climate change efforts. So.
Yeah.
So that's our job is to educate, but we end up having to spend way too much time fundraising to pay off legal bills because it costs money to do legal stuff. I mean, it's just when you see the boxes and boxes and the reams of paper that come into the courtroom, you think, I'm glad I didn't have to do that. I'm glad somebody else did that. Yeah, we have to pay them big bucks to do it, but I'm sure glad it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's where we are. We're paying off our bills.
Mm-hmm.
And we still have the judicial review, which is the circuit court thing, is still an ongoing bill that keeps adding. The others we're kind of taken care of. So we're just trying to bring them down. We're not raising them up at the moment, So, yeah.
Well, so we have some things in common, this long-term work for clean water, cultural work, but also music. Music is a big part of your life too, and I know that there's a relationship there between the intensity of the kind of work that we do, with the environmental justice, and then having music be there to sort of resource us.
Well, yeah. Well, what keeps me going personally is the music of Carolyn McDade and Friends, which is it's choral music. I sing with two choruses. The Gaia Women of the Great Lakes Basin, which is based in Detroit and Windsor, half Canadian, half Usonian, and then the Singing Sisters up here that we formed when we moved up this way. But there are about 11 groups across the continent that sing this music. And it's meditative music, it's environmental justice, it's social justice music. Carolyn started writing her music years ago from the women's movement, from work with Central America in Massachusetts. so it's social justice, uh, it's geared toward that, it's geared toward environmental appreciation, and we've worked on a couple of CDs. Oh Beautiful Gaia was the first one that I helped work with, and then we did one based on the words of the Earth Charter. So we spent a whole year immersing ourselves in the Earth Charter, and then we came together, and people from all the different groups came together and recorded that music. It's called My Heart Is Moved. And then we just did the last one we probably will do. I mean, Carolyn is aging out, and so are the rest of us. It's called Widening Embrace, and it's really about what do we want our legacy to be. So this is music that has a deep meaning to it. It's not frivolous in any way, and it keeps us going. We sing together. We get together, once a month and spend the day singing. We've participated in some of the writing of some of the music, but mostly it's geared to Carolyn's wisdom. So and we've done numerous fundraising. We don't take any money for anything. I mean, we do sell the CDs, but the money all goes to, after production is paid for, it goes to various good causes. So
awesome.
So we've put on a couple fundraising concerts. We did one for my 75th birthday 5 years ago.
Awesome.
At St. Andrew's Church in Beulah. That was a fun one. That's what I told them. What's what I want for my birthday? I want Singing Sisters and the Gaia Women to do a concert. So
beautiful.
About 45 of them came, and
wow,
put on a nice concert. So that music it's important to me. I mean, I know people don't use CDs much anymore, but I sure do, and I make sure that if I get a car, it has a CD player still in it.
All right.
So, because I travel around, I like to be on the road, but when I'm on the road, I like to be singing in my car.
Me too.
Yeah, the art and the music. And then there's this other project that called All Beings Confluence that kind of came in with the music, with the last CD, and these are these art panels. They're about 8 feet long, where a particular being, a plant or an animal, is represented in paint. They're beautiful. We have across the continent, I think now we have about 300 of them made. Wow. And we have the Great Lakes Basin Pod, as we call it here. It's actually at my house, and they hang in places, and people we've used them at the Bioneers Conference in Detroit a couple of times. So that's an art project that kind of goes with the music, but it's a way of immersing people in love of the natural world. So. Yeah. We call some of our music love songs to the earth. So.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we could trade CDs
yes,
after the interview.
We should. Yeah. I've got some in my car.
Me too.
I always carry them. I probably have some of yours. I have yours at home. Some of them.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think music is important.
Yeah, it lifts the spirits, soothes the soul, and sometimes you can use it to educate people. Raise awareness.
Yeah, well, we've had to cancel everything the last year and a half, so none of that's been going on. So it's kind of cramps our style a little bit. We're getting back out there.
Good.
Yeah.
So, just in closing, Peggy, any calls to action you want to lift up, or websites you'd like to name for our listeners?
Well, our website is savemiwater.org. We're in the process of probably changing it and revising and getting a new website, thanks to a grant from Freshwater Future. But in the meantime, that's our website, where we have newsletters. We do occasionally call people to action. We have an action alert kind of system, so people can sign up for that. We need to redo some of our literature, so we're looking for donations to do that kind of work, but we're really looking for volunteers. More than anything, we need particularly some young people who have some time that they're willing to devote to the organization. We have a list. It's in the latest newsletter, which is on the home page of the website. Volunteer list that tells specifically what we need help doing. We just need more human resources.
Oh,
now,
great.
too many of us are aging out, and we need to replace those workers. Sorry.
No worries.
Go away. So I'm looking for young people, which is hard because young people need to earn a living, and we don't pay anything.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully people will consider if they have a passion for water and for working on some of this stuff. We just have a lot of simple things that we need people to do, like sit at a farmer's market and run a table, for example.
Mm-hmm.
I do the Alberta market, but I can't do all the markets, and doing stuff like that, helping us do some of the research that we need to upgrade some of our literature.
Mm-hmm.
We need help with that.
That's a powerful way for young people to get involved with the movement,
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's how I got started. So many of my colleagues, we started out volunteering, and you meet all these amazing people who care, and you start to get to know people who are doing meaningful things, and one thing leads to another, and you're on your path.
Right.
So that's a really amazing opportunity for young people to volunteer for Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation.
Yeah, we got hit pretty hard by COVID. Some of our leadership got COVID and is still recovering from some of it.
I'm sorry.
We just sort of need to get back to work, and we need the help of as many people as just have a little time to focus on particular parts. But if they go to the website and look at that volunteer team development article, it lists specific tasks, and it gives my phone number. Call me.
All right.
Call me if you want to do something. I have no problem finding work for anybody.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Free mentorship.
Free mentorship. Yeah. Let me retire someday.
You deserve it.
I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
More singing, less stress.
Yeah, more garden work.
There you go.
Yeah. I have a homestead to maintain myself,
Yeah.
I have a sort of pseudo farm.
With bees.
Bees and chickens and lots of gardens and lots of trees.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for all the work that you do and have done.
And you too. Yeah.
Thank you.
So sometime we're going to have to do a concert together.
I would love to.
Singing
I know we've
Sisters,
talked about it over the years.
Singing Sisters and you and do a little thing, a little gig.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
We've said it. People heard it.
I know.
We got to
saying
do it now.
Publicly now, right?
Yeah.
Last time we said it was, I think it was at the Small Farm Conference 2 years ago or something.
Yeah. It's been a bonkers couple years since
right,
then.
It has.
But we're still here.
We are. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Peggy. Yeah, keep up the good work.